AITA for refusing to help my sister with her baby after she made a parenting decision I warned her against. So here's the deal. I, 34M, have a younger sister, Megan, 28F, who just had her first baby 6 months ago. Her daughter, Lila, is adorable, but being adorable doesn't change the fact that she is, objectively, a handful. She cries constantly, barely sleeps more than a couple of hours at a time, and my sister is absolutely wrecked. Megan's fiancé, not husband, we'll get to that, works nights and is basically absent during the day because he needs to sleep, so she's doing most of it solo. Now, a little background. Megan and I were raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs. I practically raised her. I changed diapers before I ever went on a date. I'm not exaggerating when I say I was more of a co-parent than a sibling growing up. That experience gave me a pretty strong idea of what it takes to raise a kid, and it definitely made me careful about making big life decisions, like when I have children and with whom. Megan's pregnancy was not planned. She got engaged to this guy, Tyler, after dating for only 6 months. He's not a bad guy, but he's immature, kind of lazy, and definitely not prepared for fatherhood. I expressed my concerns when they got engaged, and again, when she announced she was pregnant. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I just said, "You're not financially stable, Tyler's not emotionally stable, and raising a baby is hard, especially without a real support system." Her response? "We'll figure it out. It's not your problem." Cool. Not my problem. Got it. Fast forward to Lila's birth. Megan called me at 3 a.m. when she went into labor. I showed up at the hospital. I stayed with her the whole 22-hour labor while Tyler was in and out of the room because he couldn't handle the stress. I held her hand, got her iced chips, helped the nurses with whatever they needed. After Lila was born, I took a week off work to help them get settled at home, cooked meals, cleaned their apartment, ran errands. Tyler went back to work 3 days after the birth and basically checked out of the newborn phase. A month later, Megan started calling me every day, asking me to come over and help with Lila. She said she was exhausted, not sleeping, and couldn't get anything done. I helped where I could, but I have a demanding job and a partner. We've been together for 8 years, in my own life. It was getting to a point where I was driving across town 4 or 5 days a week just to help her get a shower or do laundry. I told her she needed to have a serious conversation with Tyler about stepping up. Her response? He's tired too. So one night, about 2 months ago, I finally had a bit of a breakdown. After working a 12-hour shift, I got a call from Megan at 9 p.m. saying she needed me to come over because Lila wouldn't stop crying and she hadn't eaten all day. I asked where Tyler was. She said he was sleeping and that she didn't want to wake him up. I said, "You're both parents. Why is his sleep more important than yours?" She started crying and hung up. I didn't go over. I felt awful, but I was completely drained. I sent her a long message the next day saying that I loved her and Lila, but I couldn't be her emergency backup anymore. I told her I had warned her this would be hard and that she needed to hold her partner accountable. I also suggested therapy, parenting groups, even offered to help her look into daycare options so she could get a break. She read the message and didn't respond. 2 weeks of silence go by. Then our mom calls me and says Megan is upset because I've abandoned her and that she's on the verge of a breakdown. I asked my mom if she was helping. She said she couldn't because of her health issues. I asked if Tyler's family was helping. Nope, they don't want to get involved. At this point, I'm angry. Everyone expects me to pick up the slack because I've always been the reliable one. But I never signed up to be a third parent to Lila. I told Megan from the beginning that this wasn't a good setup, and she brushed me off. I reminded my mom of that, and she said I was being cruel. She told me, "You wouldn't leave a drowning person just because they jumped into the river without learning how to swim first." That metaphor really pissed me off. First, I didn't leave Megan to drown. I threw her a life jacket for months. I waded in and held her above the water while everyone else stood on shore. But now I'm tired and cold and I need to dry off. I told my mom I'd still be around, but not every day, and not to clean up a mess someone else refuses to acknowledge. A week later, Megan reached out, not to apologize, but to ask me to babysit Lila for an entire weekend so she could just breathe. I said no. I told her she needed to find another solution and that I wasn't comfortable playing full-time babysitter because she needed to recharge. I offered to help her find a part-time nanny or someone she could trade off with, another new mom, maybe, but she didn't want that. She wanted me because I'm family and you owe me at least that much. That phrase, you owe me, was the last straw. I told her I don't owe her anything, that I love her and I'll always be her brother, but I'm not her co-parent. And I sure as hell don't owe her more of myself just because everyone else in her life bailed. I reminded her that she made these choices and that she didn't want my input back when it could have made a difference. She said I was selfish and cruel and accused me of resenting her for our childhood. Maybe I do a little. Maybe I'm tired of always being the one to clean up everyone else's life while no one bothers to ask how I'm doing. Now, my partner is telling me I did the right thing and that I've been more than generous. But some friends and my mom say I should have sucked it up for the sake of the baby. That it's not Lila's fault and she shouldn't suffer because her mom made bad choices. That maybe if I just gave Megan a few weekends off here and there, it would make a huge difference. But I'm torn. I don't hate my niece. I don't even hate my sister. I just want boundaries. I want my own life. I want to stop feeling like the only adult in a family full of children pretending to be grown-ups. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her baby after she made a parenting decision I warned her against. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for canceling my daughter's college fund after she chose her mother over me. I, 46M, have a daughter, Ava, 18F, with my ex-wife, Melissa, 44F. We divorced when Ava was 8. Melissa and I had a pretty contentious breakup, mostly due to differing priorities. I'm more traditional and career-focused, while Melissa is much more laid-back, kind of a free spirit type. That clash translated into almost everything: parenting style, lifestyle choices, even how we viewed education. When we divorced, I fought for joint custody, and it was granted. But Melissa constantly found ways to undermine the agreement. She wanted Ava more than 50% of the time and would play games, scheduling vacations during my time, signing Ava up for activities that conflicted with my weekends, telling Ava she could decide for herself, even when it contradicted our legal agreement. I tried to take the high road for Ava's sake. I wanted stability for her, so I didn't retaliate legally even though I could have. I always paid child support on time, even though we had joint custody. And more than that, I set up a college fund for Ava when she was born. I've been contributing to it every month for 18 years. It's a solid fund, over $120,000. I wanted to give her the kind of start in life I never had. Melissa always told Ava things like, "You don't need to go to college to be happy," or "Traveling the world is more important than a degree." That's fine in theory, but Ava started adopting that mindset too. In high school, she wasn't particularly studious, but I chalked that up to teenage behavior. I helped her with assignments, got her tutors, everything I could to keep her grades up. Fast forward to her senior year, Ava told me she didn't want to go to college. She said she wanted to take a gap year to travel. I wasn't thrilled, but I said okay. As long as she eventually used the fund for college, it was hers. She thanked me and promised she would. That was in September. By December, Ava had dropped the whole gap year idea and announced that she was moving in with her mom full-time and that they were going to start a travel vlog together. Apparently, they've been planning it behind my back. Melissa has always wanted to be some kind of influencer and thinks Ava's youth and her eye for aesthetics would help her succeed. I was blindsided. I told Ava I thought it was a huge mistake and that she was throwing away opportunities. She said I was being controlling and that she wanted to live her own life. She also said she expected the college fund to support her during their travels, things like flights, equipment, hotels, etc. I told her absolutely not. That money was for education, period. She got angry and said it was her money, and I had no right to take it away. I reminded her that I set it up in my name, and I control the distribution. If she didn't use it for college or some form of higher education, she wasn't getting a dime. That triggered a major blow-up. Ava blocked me for a few weeks. Melissa called me a financial manipulator and said I was punishing Ava for choosing her mom. Maybe that stung because there's a bit of truth in it. Ava choosing to live full-time with Melissa after everything I've done hurt more than I want to admit. Still, I stood firm. I changed the account structure to make sure there was no ambiguity. Ava can only access the funds through reimbursement for verified educational expenses. Ava finally unblocked me last month and asked to meet for lunch. I thought she might be ready to talk about a compromise. Instead, she showed up with Melissa, who did most of the talking. They presented a proposal to use $30,000 of the fund for a 6-month trip through Europe and Southeast Asia. They had a pitch deck and everything: content strategies, brand outreach plans, sponsorship ideas. They said the trip would build Ava's future in media and entrepreneurship. I told them no again. I said if Ava enrolled in any program, college, trade school, something, I'd be happy to support her fully. But I wasn't going to bankroll a vacation disguised as a business venture. Melissa scoffed and told me I was just jealous because Ava chose her. That stung more than I care to admit. I didn't argue. I just paid for my lunch and left. Since then, my relationship with Ava has deteriorated. She texts occasionally, mostly to guilt-trip me. Tells me I turned my back on her and that I care more about my principles than my daughter. She's been posting cryptic things on Instagram about controlling parents and toxic family dynamics. Meanwhile, Melissa's followers have doubled, and she's already selling merch with Ava's face on it. Some friends say I should just give her the money, let her make her own mistakes. They argue that if she fails, she'll learn something, and if she succeeds, I'll look like the bad guy who didn't believe in her. Others say I'm absolutely right to withhold the money, that it was meant for a specific purpose, and I'm not obligated to fund someone's vacation just because they share my DNA. I don't know anymore. I thought I was doing the right thing, building a future for my kid. But maybe I'm being too rigid. Maybe I'm letting my hurt feelings cloud my judgment. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my daughter use her college fund to travel with her mom instead of going to school. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law and her kids move into my house after she lost everything. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Andrew, 36M, for 8 years. We have 2 kids, 6 and 4. We live in a suburban area in a home that we bought together 5 years ago after years of saving and careful planning. It's not a mansion, but it's cozy, updated, and ours. Andrew has 1 sibling, his younger sister Natalie, 32F. Growing up, Natalie was the golden child, at least according to Andrew. Their parents, still alive, both retired and living in Florida, favored her pretty openly. Natalie was always a bit chaotic. She was the type to quit a job on a whim, go on impromptu trips she couldn't afford, get into whirlwind relationships, and ask for help later. I've always been polite to her, but we're not close. Honestly, I've never fully trusted her judgment, and unfortunately, recent events have only reinforced that. Natalie got married young, had 3 kids in quick succession, now ages 8, 6, and 3, and divorced just as fast. Her ex-husband hasn't paid child support in over a year and lives out of state. She was working part-time at a boutique, but wasn't saving anything. She was renting a small place, and from what Andrew told me, was already behind on rent by March. Then, 2 weeks ago, she called us in a full-blown panic. She'd been evicted. She didn't tell anyone until the sheriff literally came to change the locks. Her car had just been repossessed the week before, and she had no money, no backup plan, and nowhere to go. She and her kids spent a night at a friend's place and then went to a shelter. That's when she called Andrew, asking if she could come stay with us. I wasn't heartless about it. I asked Andrew for a day to think. We have a 3-bedroom house. The kids share a room right now, and we use the 3rd as a guest room/office. If Natalie moved in, she'd be bringing 3 kids. That's 4 extra people. We'd have to move our kids into our room or the living room, or cram 5 children into 1 room. Our only bathroom will be shared by 7 people. I work remotely full-time, and our Wi-Fi is barely reliable with just the 4 of us online. I kept thinking of the chaos it would cause. But it wasn't just logistics. It was Natalie. She's always had a pattern. Mess up, lean on someone else, and never really learn. I told Andrew I was worried she'd have no incentive to leave if we let her move in. She's never been great with boundaries. She has a history of borrowing money and not paying it back. I knew she'd treat our house like a crash pad, not a temporary situation. I suggested we pay for her to stay at an extended stay hotel for a few weeks while she figured something else out. Andrew hesitated, but agreed it was a decent compromise. We called her and made the offer. She got quiet for a moment and then blew up. She accused us of being heartless, said a real family wouldn't let a mother and her kids live in a motel while they had a whole house to themselves. She said I was controlling Andrew, that I never liked her, and that I didn't care about her children. She told Andrew she was ashamed to call him her brother and hung up. Later that night, she texted him a photo of her kids sleeping on the floor of the shelter with a caption that just said, "Thanks for nothing." Andrew was devastated. He felt guilty. He said maybe we should let her move in, just temporarily. I stood my ground. I said I was sorry, but I was not comfortable bringing that kind of instability into our home and disrupting our kids' lives indefinitely. He dropped it reluctantly. Then his parents called. Apparently, Natalie told them we slammed the door in her face while she was homeless with children. They lit into Andrew, accusing him of abandoning his sister and being whipped by his wife. I've never heard them yell at him like that before. I stayed quiet during the call, but I was shaking. Andrew defended me, but he was clearly conflicted. Since then, things have been tense in our house. He's quieter, distracted. He still agrees that we made the best choice for our family, but I can tell he's not at peace with it. I don't blame him. It's a horrible situation. I've offered to pay for a longer hotel stay, to look into low-income housing options with her, even to loan her money for a down payment on a new apartment once she finds a job. She hasn't responded to any of it. She just keeps sending passive-aggressive texts to Andrew and making vague posts on Facebook about being betrayed by blood. Some of our extended family members have started chiming in now, taking sides. A couple of cousins have messaged me saying I should have sucked it up for a few months. Others say I did the right thing, that Natalie needs a reality check. I'm trying not to let it get to me, but I'm second-guessing myself. I keep wondering if maybe I should have just let her move in. Maybe I could have set firm boundaries. Maybe this was a test of character and I failed. But then I think about what would happen to our own kids if things got out of hand. If Natalie never left. If she made our home into a constant source of stress. If she took advantage of us and burned bridges along the way. I've seen her do it before, with other friends, with our in-laws. I didn't want to be next. I wanted to protect my peace and my children's peace. But in doing so, did I abandon someone in real need? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law and her kids move into our house, even though they had nowhere else to go. AITA for kicking my brother and his fiancée out of my wedding after they hijacked it for their pregnancy announcement. I, 28F, got married 3 weeks ago to my now husband Ryan, 30M. It was the happiest day of my life, or at least it was supposed to be. We had been planning our wedding for over a year, saved every penny ourselves, and were meticulous about every detail. We didn't want a lavish event, just something elegant and intimate with our closest family and friends. About 75 guests were there, most of whom traveled to our small town for the ceremony. My younger brother Josh, 26M, and his fiancée Emily, 25F, were invited. Josh and I have always had a bit of a complicated relationship. We're polar opposites. He's loud, impulsive, and a bit of show-off. I'm more reserved and cautious. Growing up, he always tried to outshine me, and I always let it slide because he was the baby of the family. My parents constantly made excuses for him. When he got suspended in high school for starting a fire in the locker room, it was just a phase. When he totaled 2 of my dad's cars, it was because he's adventurous. I've had to work for everything I've got. Got into college with scholarships, worked 2 jobs to support myself, paid for this entire wedding with no help from anyone but my husband. Josh, meanwhile, bounced between jobs, mooched off our parents, and lived rent-free in their basement until very recently. Still, I invited him to the wedding because he's family, and I didn't want to cause drama, especially not on my big day. Fast forward to the wedding day. The ceremony went beautifully, and the weather was perfect. Everything was going smoothly until the reception. We had just finished the first dance and were sitting down to eat. My dad got up to give his speech, sweet, emotional, everything I wanted. Then Josh stood up. Now, we hadn't planned for him to give a speech. I figured he might say a quick toast, and I didn't want to make a scene, so I smiled and nodded. He took the mic, tapped it dramatically, and started joking around about how hard it is to follow Dad. Then, after a few awkward jokes, he said, "Well, I think it's time we add some more good news to today's festivities." He turned to Emily and said, "Do you want to tell them, or should I?" She giggled and stood up, placing her hands on her stomach. "I'm pregnant," she shouted. The room gasped, and then a few claps followed. I just sat there, stunned. Ryan looked at me with wide eyes, and I could tell he was also in shock. My heart sank. Josh then said something like, "We figured what better time to share than when the whole family's already together to celebrate love and new beginnings, right?" At first, I didn't know what to do. I was frozen in place. But the more people congratulated them and fussed over Emily, the more I realized my entire reception was now revolving around their news. Suddenly, our wedding wasn't about us anymore. It was about their baby. Even our cake cutting was delayed because people were crowding around them. Photographers started taking pictures of Emily holding her belly. People were offering toasts to the baby. One of Ryan's aunts even said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about the new baby." Such a surprise. I snapped. I walked up to Josh and Emily and asked to speak with them privately. I tried to stay calm, but I was furious. I told them it was incredibly disrespectful to hijack my wedding to announce their pregnancy. Josh just laughed and said, "Come on, don't be like that. We thought it'd make the day even more special." I told him, "This was our day. You didn't even ask. You made it about you, like you always do." Emily looked hurt and said they thought it was a gift to the day, not a distraction. I told them to leave. Right then and there, Josh called me a selfish brat, said I was overreacting and that I'd regret making a big deal out of this. Emily was crying, but I didn't care anymore. I asked security to escort them out. They didn't resist much, probably because of how many guests were staring. The rest of the night was tense. Some people whispered, others tried to console me, and a few told me they thought I had overreacted. My mom was especially upset and said I humiliated my brother and caused unnecessary drama over happy news. My dad was more neutral, though I could tell he was disappointed in how it all unfolded. The next day, I woke up to texts from relatives, some saying I did the right thing, others saying I ruined my own wedding by creating a scene. Emily posted a vague Facebook status about being shamed for sharing joy and how some people can't handle being outshined. That post got a lot of support, including from mutual friends. Now, 3 weeks later, my relationship with Josh is in the toilet. My mom keeps pressuring me to apologize and make peace because family is everything. Even Ryan's starting to wonder if kicking them out was too harsh. But I don't know. I just feel like there's a time and a place for everything, and they chose my wedding, a moment I had waited for my entire life, to make their announcement. Was it really too much to ask for one day to just be about us? One day where I didn't have to be the one making space for Josh's antics. So, AITA? AITA for telling my brother that he's too entitled to expect me to cover for him financially? So a bit of background. I, 28F, have an older brother, Matt, 32M. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child. He excelled in school, was always the center of attention, and never really had to struggle much for anything. I was the quieter, more introverted one who didn't get much attention. But I learned how to fend for myself, and over time, I developed a pretty solid work ethic. As we got older, Matt's behavior never really changed. He always seemed to think that things should be handed to him because he was the special one. I, on the other hand, worked hard to build a career, make solid financial decisions, and maintain my independence. Over the years, he's constantly asked me for financial help. Sometimes it's for big things like car repairs or helping him get by while he's in between jobs. And sometimes it's for more frivolous things like taking a last-minute trip or buying an expensive gadget. I've helped him out in the past, but I've started to feel resentful. A couple of months ago, Matt came to me with a major request. He had just bought a new car, a very fancy one, and he'd been hit with a few unexpected bills. To be clear, he could have easily avoided these bills by not buying the car or by budgeting more carefully, but he'd gotten caught up in the excitement of the purchase. Now, he wanted me to lend him $5,000 to cover the bills. His reasoning was that I owed him for helping me with so many things in the past, and that it was time for me to return the favor. I was taken aback. I had already helped him out a few months before with some credit card debt, and I was just starting to get back on track financially after that. I told him that while I loved him, I couldn't afford to give him that kind of money right now. I explained that I had my own bills to pay and that I didn't feel comfortable bailing him out for something that was his own responsibility. He got very upset and said I was being selfish, that I didn't care about family, and that if the roles were reversed, he would help me without hesitation. This is where things took a turn. I got frustrated and reminded him of all the times I had helped him in the past, even when I didn't really want to. I pointed out that I wasn't his personal bank and that he needed to take responsibility for his own choices. I also mentioned that I didn't think it was fair for him to keep asking me for money every time he made an impulsive decision. Well, Matt didn't take that well. He said I was being too harsh and that I didn't understand how hard his life was. He said that he had always been there for me emotionally, which, by the way, I don't remember ever asking for, and that he deserved more from me. It turned into a pretty heated argument, and eventually he stormed out, saying he didn't want to speak to me until I figure out how to be a better sister. Now, my parents are involved. They've been calling me almost daily, trying to convince me that I'm being unreasonable and that families should always help each other out in times of need. They've even hinted that if I don't lend him the money, I'll be seen as the bad sibling for the rest of our lives. They've also implied that I should have been more understanding of his situation and that the money wouldn't be a big deal for me to give since I have it to spare. My dad even said that family sticks together and that if I truly cared about Matt, I'd help him. But I'm honestly feeling really conflicted about all of this. I don't want to be the bad guy, but at the same time, I don't think it's fair to keep enabling my brother's entitled behavior. He's a grown man, and he needs to start making responsible decisions, especially when it comes to his finances. I'm not rich, and I've worked hard to get where I am. The argument has left me feeling drained and guilty. I've been questioning whether I'm really in the wrong here. I've tried to explain to my parents that I can't keep sacrificing my own financial stability to cover for Matt's mistakes, but they don't seem to get it. They just keep telling me I'm being too harsh on him and that I need to show more compassion. I guess my question is, AITA for refusing to lend my brother the money? Should I have just given it to him to keep the peace? Or am I justified in saying no? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me in the past. I, 28F, have a sister, Kayla, 32F, who's always been a bit difficult. Our relationship has never been great, but over the years, I've tried to maintain some level of connection with her, even if it meant swallowing my pride and putting up with her behavior. Recently, she got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 35M, and I was expected to play a role in her wedding. But after everything that happened between us, I've made the decision not to attend, and now my family is furious with me. Here's a bit of context. Kayla has always been the golden child of the family. She's the oldest, the most accomplished in terms of career, and, in the eyes of our parents, the one who can do no wrong. Growing up, this dynamic wasn't exactly great for me. I was the problem child because I didn't excel in the same areas. I wasn't particularly academic, and I struggled with confidence, while Kayla breezed through everything. Still, I always tried to be supportive, though it often felt like my achievements, no matter how big or small, were downplayed in comparison to hers. As we got older, the dynamic didn't improve. Kayla became more controlling, more dismissive of me. I remember when I was in my late teens, I had a small birthday party with a few friends, and she showed up uninvited. She proceeded to act like she was the center of attention, overshadowing my celebration. When I tried to stand up for myself, my parents brushed it off as Kayla being Kayla, and I was told to let it go. Fast forward to a few years ago when Kayla got engaged to Mark. I wasn't invited to the engagement party, but I didn't think too much of it at the time because it's not like she's ever been all that great at including me in things. When I found out about it, I tried to make peace with it because in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a big deal. But the issue became more apparent when it came to the actual wedding planning. I was initially asked to be a bridesmaid, which I thought was a huge step forward in our relationship, considering how distant we've been. I accepted, though I was a little hesitant because of our past. It felt like a step in the right direction, so I pushed my doubts aside. But as the planning went on, things started to go downhill. Kayla had a vision for her wedding, and that vision didn't seem to include me unless I was performing a specific role that suited her. For example, I was expected to help organize her bachelorette party, but I was given a list of instructions on what to do instead of being allowed to contribute any of my own ideas. I suggested a few activities that I thought would be fun, but they were immediately shot down. "I don't want that kind of vibe," she said. Fine. I bit my tongue, but it was starting to feel like I was just a pawn in her wedding fantasy. Things took a turn when she started picking out bridesmaid dresses. She sent out an email with a link to one that she'd already chosen for all of us, claiming it was non-negotiable. I wasn't thrilled about the dress. It wasn't really my style, but I tried to be a good sport. When I tried it on, I realized it didn't fit right, and I wasn't exactly comfortable with how I looked in it. So I expressed my concerns, hoping she'd understand. She didn't. She told me I was being ridiculous and that it's not about me, it's about the wedding. I told her that I would find a way to make it work, but I didn't feel like she was being very considerate of my feelings. The final straw came when I found out she had been talking to some of the other bridesmaids about me behind my back. They came to me and said she was making comments like, "I'm afraid she's going to ruin the wedding," and "she always makes everything about her." I was shocked and hurt. I hadn't done anything to deserve that. I had been nothing but supportive and had even gone out of my way to help with all the planning. But it was clear Kayla didn't appreciate any of it. When I confronted her about it, she denied it at first, but eventually admitted she had said those things. She told me she was stressed and that I just wasn't getting it. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I wouldn't attend the wedding, and she lost it. She said I was ruining everything and being selfish. My parents are furious with me as well, saying I'm making a scene and causing unnecessary drama. They've been pressuring me to change my mind and attend, but I feel like I can't. She's treated me like a second-class citizen my entire life, and I don't want to be part of a day where I'm not valued. It's not about the wedding for me. It's about how I've been treated. I've tried explaining this to my family, but they're not hearing me. They think I'm being overly sensitive or that I should just let it go for the sake of family harmony. I've always been the one to back down and let things slide, but this time I'm standing my ground. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding? Am I wrong for drawing the line here? I know weddings are stressful, but I can't shake the feeling that this has been years in the making, and I'm just done. AITA for not letting my husband's adult daughter move back in after she tried to get me fired? I, 45F, have been married to my husband Daniel, 48M, for 6 years. He has a daughter, Kayla, 24F, from a previous relationship. I have 2 kids from my own past marriage, Alex, 16M, and Bree, 14F, and Daniel's been a great stepdad to them. For the most part, we've had a peaceful household, but things with Kayla have never been easy. Kayla lived with us for the first 2 years of our marriage while she was in college. At first, I really tried to get along with her. I made space in our home, invited her to family events, cooked her favorite meals, even drove out of my way to help her move some of her stuff from her mom's place. I knew it wasn't easy for her, having a stepmom and sharing her dad, so I did my best to not make it harder. But she was cold to me from the beginning. Not outright rude, just passive-aggressive. She'd ignore me during dinner, talk over me when I tried to join conversations, roll her eyes when I made a suggestion about anything around the house. She never included me in family photos or holiday plans. She always went to her mom's on the major holidays and made a show of how it was just tradition. I let it go for a long time. Daniel noticed it, but said she'd come around. He admitted she'd always had a hard time letting him go when he and her mom split. I figured give it time. The real problem started when Kayla got involved with a friend group that was very anti-corporate, very politically active, very online. Nothing wrong with that in itself. But they dug deep into exposing people online and believed anyone working in corporate America was part of the system. I work in HR for a major tech company. Not exactly a warlord, but to them, I was enemy number one. Somehow, Kayla thought it'd be funny or righteous to anonymously report me to my company. She compiled fake screenshots from a burner account that supposedly showed me making discriminatory remarks in a forum about hiring biases and boomer policies. The worst part? She used phrases I'd actually said at home, like joking about how my Gen Z coworkers make me feel ancient. She didn't know that my company has a whole investigation process and that I keep meticulous work records. They found the report suspicious, especially because the screenshots had inconsistencies. They tracked the IP address. HR, a different department than mine, eventually traced the report back to a proxy server linked to a public library near our house. It was enough to raise red flags. They warned me, but said they wouldn't take action, as the report didn't hold up and seemed personal. I was humiliated. Even though I wasn't penalized, I had to explain myself in multiple interviews. And when I told Daniel what happened, I could tell he was horrified but didn't know what to do. I didn't have proof it was Kayla, but I recognized her wording, and the timing lined up with a huge fight we had about me selling out. A month later, Kayla admitted it during an argument with Daniel. He told her he was hurt and disappointed, and she left the house voluntarily to live with friends. She's been mostly no contact with me since. Now, 2 years later, she reached out to Daniel asking to move back in. She had a falling out with her friends, couldn't afford her rent, and didn't want to go back to her mom's because they don't get along. She asked if she could stay with us for 6 months while she rebuilds. Daniel came to me and asked if we could give her a second chance. I said no, flat out. I don't want her in my home. She tried to destroy my career out of spite. She weaponized my job and put my livelihood at risk. I told him I couldn't live in the same house as her again, especially not while I'm still in the same job. It was a breach of trust one don't think I can ever get over. Daniel told me he understood my feelings, but felt like I was being too harsh. He thinks Kayla's grown up and regrets what she did. He said that if it had been one of my kids who made a mistake and came asking for forgiveness, I'd want him to be forgiving too. I said maybe, but my kids have never done anything remotely close to what Kayla did. And if they did, I'd expect consequences. That night, Daniel slept in the guest room. He didn't say much the next morning. Since then, there's been a huge tension in the house. He hasn't pushed the issue again, but he's clearly upset with me. I know he loves his daughter. I know he's in an impossible situation. But I feel like I'm being asked to sacrifice my mental health, my peace, and my boundaries for someone who deliberately tried to harm me. Alex and Breen know something's going on. I haven't told them the whole story, but they've asked if everything's okay. I just said it was adult stuff and not to worry. I don't want to drag them into it. I talked to a friend about it, and she said I should try to forgive Kayla and be the bigger person. She said I should see this as a chance to rebuild the family. But every time I think about letting her back in this house, I get a knot in my stomach. I feel unsafe, like I can't relax or trust her. And honestly, I resent that Daniel would even ask me to open that door again. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I'm holding on to something I should let go of. But I keep thinking, if the situation were reversed and my kid had tried to sabotage Daniel's job, would he really be able to just forgive and forget? So, Reddit, AITA for not letting my husband's daughter move back in after she tried to get me fired? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his new wife stay in the guest house I built for my late wife's parents? I, 38M, lost my wife, Julia, 5 years ago. We were together for 10 years, married for 6, and she was the love of my life. She passed away suddenly from a brain aneurysm. It devastated me. I spent the first 2 years just trying to keep myself afloat. Therapy, grief groups, journaling, anything to help me process the loss. Julia's parents, Rick and Linda, were like a second family to me. After she passed, they grieved with me. We became even closer because we were the only 3 people in the world who truly understood what it felt like to lose her. I didn't want them to feel like they lost their daughter and me, so I made a point to stay in touch. We started doing Sunday dinners, holidays, and eventually I invited them to move in with me. Not in my main house, but into a separate guest house I had built on my property. I live on about 3 acres just outside of town. I work remotely and do okay financially. I hired a local contractor and paid to build a small but cozy guest house. One bedroom, one bath, small kitchen, and a living room. It's nothing fancy, but it's well kept and has a beautiful view of the woods. It was built specifically with them in mind, and I even let them choose the design details. Rick and Linda lived there for almost 3 years before they both passed away within 8 months of each other. Linda from cancer, and Rick from what I believe was a broken heart. After they were gone, I couldn't bring myself to rent the place out. I kept it clean, maintained the garden Linda loved, and even left some of their furniture in place. It became a sort of memorial, and honestly, it was comforting knowing it was there. Sometimes I go sit on the porch and drink a cup of coffee when I miss all of them. Enter my younger brother, Matt, 35M, and his new wife, Ava, 32F. They got married last year after a whirlwind romance that none of us really expected. Matt has always been impulsive. He's had at least 6 different jobs in the past 5 years, ranging from real estate to selling crypto. Ava is, well, she's outspoken and a bit self-centered. When I met her at Christmas, she spent the entire dinner talking about how she planned to quit her job to become a full-time lifestyle influencer, even though she had fewer than 1,000 followers. Matt and Ava ran into some financial trouble a couple months ago. Matt's latest startup folded, and Ava had already quit her job. They were living in a rented condo that they could no longer afford, and they reached out to family for help. I was expecting them to ask to stay in one of the spare rooms in my main house temporarily. But instead, Matt called and said, "Hey, we were thinking we could move into the guest house for a few months, just until we get back on our feet." I paused. I told him I wasn't comfortable with that. I explained that the guest house was a very personal space for me, that it was built for Julia's parents, and that I wasn't ready to let anyone else live there, especially not full-time. Matt got defensive. He said I was being dramatic, and that it was just a building, and that I was clinging to the past instead of helping my family in the present. I told him I could help in other ways, like helping them find a cheap rental, covering a security deposit, or letting them stay in one of the 2 guest bedrooms in the main house. But he refused. He said Ava wouldn't feel comfortable living in someone else's house, and that they needed independence, even if it was on my property. A few days later, I got a call from my mom, who was clearly annoyed. She said Matt had told her I was refusing to help them, and she didn't understand why I was being so territorial over a guest house that was sitting empty. I tried to explain the emotional significance of the space, but she didn't really get it. She said she was sorry for my loss, but that had been 5 years, and maybe it was time to move forward. That phrase, *move forward*, hit me like a slap. I have moved forward. I rebuilt my life. I still work, maintain friendships, volunteer, and even went on a few dates last year. But just because I'm not crying every day doesn't mean I have to erase everything that mattered. That guest house isn't just a building. It's a piece of my history, my connection to the woman I loved, and the people who became my family. I told my mom that Matt and Ava could either stay in the main house or not at all, that I wouldn't allow anyone to live in that guest house unless I was truly at peace with it. A week later, I found out Matt and Ava moved in with one of Ava's cousins, but now they're posting vague stuff on social media about fake family and how some people would rather worship ghosts than help the living. I've started getting cold shoulders from a few relatives. My aunt even texted me saying they're newlyweds. You could have made an exception. I don't know. Maybe I'm being stubborn. Maybe grief has made me too sentimental about a structure. But to me, that little guest house is sacred. It's where Rick and Linda lived out their final years, still talking about their daughter like she was just in the next room. It's where I watched fireworks with them on 4th of July, helped Rick with woodworking projects, and shared tea with Linda on quiet mornings. The idea of Ava doing TikTok dances in that living room or redecorating everything to match some influencer aesthetic makes my stomach turn. I don't think they respect the space, and I don't trust them not to treat it like a free Airbnb. I know people grieve differently. I know time marches on, but I don't think it makes me an asshole to protect something that holds so much meaning for me. Still, enough people have made me feel like I'm being selfish that I'm starting to second-guess myself. So, AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she disinvited me because of my pregnancy. I, 28F, have been best friends with Sarah, 30F, since high school. We've always been close through the ups and downs of life, and we've always been there for each other. When Sarah got engaged to her now fiancé, Mark, 32M, I was overjoyed for her. She asked me to be her maid of honor, and of course, I said yes. It was an honor, and I was genuinely excited to stand by her side on her big day. Sarah and I have always had a very close relationship. We've supported each other through breakups, family drama, and career changes. When I found I was pregnant a few months ago, I was thrilled, but I was also a little nervous about how my pregnancy would impact things. At first, I didn't think it would be a big deal. My due date is just a few weeks after Sarah's wedding. So I figured I would be in the final stages of pregnancy, but would still be able to attend. However, things started to get tricky when I started experiencing some complications with my pregnancy. It's nothing life-threatening, but I've been put on bed rest for the last few weeks, and I've been feeling more tired and uncomfortable than I had anticipated. I knew that my energy levels would be pretty low during the wedding, but I still planned on being there, as I didn't want to miss it. I started looking for ways to make attending easier, like arranging a comfortable seat and making sure I had a quiet space to rest if I needed to. I spoke to Sarah about the situation, and she was initially understanding. She told me that she didn't expect me to do much during the wedding, and she just wanted me to be there. I was so relieved. I thought everything was fine, and I even started getting excited to be there for her. I started to make arrangements for travel and accommodations. Then, about 2 weeks ago, Sarah called me and said she needed to talk to me. I immediately got nervous because it's not like her to have serious conversations over the phone, especially when we're so close. When we talked, she told me that she and Mark had been discussing things, and they'd come to the conclusion that my pregnancy might take away from the atmosphere of the wedding. She said that she understood that I couldn't help being pregnant, but they didn't want anything to distract from their big day, and they thought it would be better if I didn't attend. I was completely stunned. I honestly didn't know how to respond. I asked her if she was serious, and she confirmed that she was. She said they were trying to create a perfect experience for their guests and didn't want my pregnancy to steal the spotlight. I felt like I was being punched in the stomach. I had been looking forward to being there for her, and now she was telling me that she didn't want me there at all. I tried to explain to her that my pregnancy didn't mean I wouldn't be able to be supportive, that I still wanted to attend and be a part of her special day. I told her that I had planned to stay seated and keep to myself so as not to be a distraction. But she insisted that it would just be awkward and that it would be better if I didn't come. She said, "We just want everything to be perfect and we think this is the best decision." I was in complete shock. I tried to ask her if she was sure, but she just kept repeating that it was what was best for the wedding. Eventually, I got off the phone, and I was devastated. I felt betrayed and heartbroken. This was the woman I had been best friends with for years, and she was now telling me that I couldn't be there for one of the most important days of her life because of my pregnancy. After hanging up, I spent hours crying. I felt so rejected, and I didn't know how to process what had just happened. My mind kept going back to the moments we had shared, the times I had stood by her side through everything, and now she was telling me I wasn't welcome at her wedding. I spoke to a few other friends about the situation, and most of them were just as shocked as I was. They couldn't believe that Sarah would disinvite me over something like my pregnancy. Some said they understood that weddings could be stressful, but they didn't think it was fair for Sarah to take this decision so lightly. My partner was also really upset. He said it was clear Sarah didn't understand how important this wedding was to me, and he suggested that I send her a message telling her how hurt I was by her actions. But I wasn't sure what to do. I didn't want to make things worse, but at the same time, I felt like I was being treated unfairly. The thing is, I don't even know if I want to attend anymore. The way Sarah handled this really hurt me, and I'm struggling to understand why she would do this. My pregnancy is not something I can control, and I'm not going to apologize for it, but it feels like she's punishing me for something that is out of my hands. A part of me still wants to support her, but I'm also angry. I don't feel like I should have to beg to be included in her wedding, especially when I've been such a supportive friend in the past. It's hard for me to let go of the idea of being there for her on her big day, but it's also hard to shake the feeling that I've been hurt by someone I thought I could count on. So, I guess my question is, AITA for not wanting to attend my best friend's wedding after she disinvited me because of my pregnancy? Should I try to salvage our friendship? Or is this something I should let go? I'm just so torn, and I don't know what to do. AITA for not allowing my sister to bring her new boyfriend to my wedding after what he did at the engagement party. So, to give a little context, I, 28F, am getting married in a few months to my fiancé, Matt, 30M. We've been together for 5 years, and everything is going great. We're both really excited, and things are finally coming together for the wedding. I have one older sister, Lily, 32F, who's always been a bit difficult, for lack of a better word. She has a history of making everything about her, which is something I've learned to tolerate over the years. A few months ago, we had an engagement party at my parents' house. It was supposed to be a small gathering, just family and close friends. Lily, as usual, was late to the party and arrived with a new boyfriend. We didn't even know she was seeing anyone seriously, so everyone was a little surprised. We didn't get too many details about him because the night was really about celebrating Matt and me, but we all made the best of it. Now, the real issue came when I caught my sister and her boyfriend in the corner talking a little too loudly. As I walked by, I overheard her saying something like, I could have been married by now if I hadn't had to deal with all of this crap. And then she pointed at me. I don't think she realized I heard it, but I was livid. It wasn't just that she was complaining about me in front of everyone. It was that she was comparing our lives as if my engagement somehow diminished her own life choices. I ignored it at first because, honestly, I didn't want to cause a scene. But it didn't end there. Later on, when Matt and I were giving a toast, Lily's boyfriend stood up and interrupted us, saying something along the lines of, "Let's all be real. Some of us are still waiting for our turn to shine, huh?" He wasn't even looking at us when he said it. He was looking at my parents and shaking his head like he was making some kind of big statement. The whole room went silent. I had no idea who this guy was, but I already wasn't a fan. I confronted Lily after that, pulling her aside and asking her what the hell was going on. She just shrugged it off, saying, "It's not a big deal, he's just joking around." But I wasn't laughing. I told her I didn't appreciate how she and her boyfriend were acting at my engagement party and that they were making it awkward for everyone. She rolled her eyes and said I was being too sensitive. She seemed completely unfazed, but I was fuming. The next day, I told Matt about what happened, and he was really upset too. He said it was incredibly rude for someone to hijack our special moment like that, especially someone we didn't even know. So, I made the decision to tell Lily that her boyfriend was not invited to the wedding. I didn't want any more drama, and I wanted to keep our special day as peaceful and happy as possible. I texted her and said, "Hey, I know you really like your boyfriend, but after what happened at the engagement party, I just don't feel comfortable having him at the wedding. I hope you understand." Lily was furious. She called me multiple times, leaving angry voicemails saying that I was ruining her life and that I was taking away her chance to be happy. She even said that I was trying to control her relationships and that she wasn't going to attend the wedding if he wasn't invited. I was taken aback by how over-the-top her reaction was. I tried to remain calm and explained that it wasn't about her relationships, but about the way her boyfriend acted, and that it was important to me to have a peaceful and respectful celebration. But she wasn't having it. A few weeks later, I ran into her at a family gathering, and she confronted me again. She said that I was being a terrible sister and that I was being selfish by not letting her bring her boyfriend. I told her that I had made my decision, and it wasn't up for debate. She looked like she was about to cry and accused me of always being the golden child, but I stuck to my guns. Now, my parents are in the middle of all of this. They said they understand why I feel the way I do, but they're also worried about causing a rift in the family. My mom tried to convince me to at least let Lily bring her boyfriend to the wedding, but I just don't feel like I can. I've been clear about my boundaries, and I don't want to allow someone who disrespected us to come to such an important event. To make matters worse, Lily has been posting about the whole situation on social media, making passive-aggressive posts about how toxic family members always think they can control everything. Some of our extended family has seen these posts, and now I'm getting calls and texts asking if everything's okay. It's becoming more dramatic by the day, and I'm starting to feel like I might have made the wrong decision. So, AITA for not allowing my sister's boyfriend to come to my wedding after his behavior at the engagement party? Should I have just let it go and ignored it for the sake of family peace? Or did I make the right call in setting boundaries? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to make me be her maid of honor last minute? I, 29F, have a sister, Emily, 26F, who I've always been close to. We've had our ups and downs, but generally we get along. A few months ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mike, 28M, and I was excited for her. I always thought she'd ask me to be her maid of honor because, well, I'm her sister, and we're close. However, a few weeks ago, I found out I wasn't even considered for the role, and that didn't sit well with me. At first, I was a little hurt when Emily asked me to be one of her bridesmaids, but told me she had already chosen her maid of honor. I figured maybe she had someone else in mind. One of her childhood friends, maybe. I didn't think much of it and agreed to be a bridesmaid. It was a bit odd, but I didn't want to make a big deal about it. I thought that would be the end of it. However, about 3 weeks ago, Emily came to me and said she wanted to talk. We sat down, and she told me that her maid of honor had to drop out due to some personal issues. Apparently, her maid of honor, Kate, 27F, who's been her best friend since high school, had a family emergency and couldn't make it to the wedding. Emily was devastated because she had no idea who else could step in on such short notice. I don't know if I should have been surprised, but Emily then asked me if I would step in as her maid of honor at the last minute. She said that since I was her sister and I knew her so well, it would make perfect sense. The wedding was only 2 weeks away at this point. I was shocked. I thought she would have planned better, and I definitely didn't think it was fair to ask me to take over such an important role at the last minute. I explained to Emily that I wasn't sure if I could handle it given the time constraints, especially with the wedding being so close. I already had to adjust a lot of plans to be a bridesmaid, and now she was asking me to step into a much bigger role. I told her I didn't feel ready to take on all the responsibilities of a maid of honor on such short notice. She was insistent and even started getting upset, telling me I was her sister and that I should want to help her, especially with everything that was going on. I still wasn't comfortable, and I told her no. I felt like this was her problem to fix, and I shouldn't have to bear the burden because of her lack of planning. Emily didn't take it well. She said that I was being selfish, and it hurt that I wasn't willing to step up for her when she needed me the most. It made me feel like she was guilting me into doing it, and I didn't like that. I tried to explain that it wasn't that I didn't want to help, but I didn't feel like I could give her the attention and support she needed with such a short time frame. The argument escalated, and she ended up telling me I was ruining her wedding by not supporting her. At this point, I got frustrated and told her that I wasn't going to change my mind. I suggested that she ask one of her other friends to step in or maybe even hire someone professionally if she needed help. That idea didn't go over well at all. She said it wasn't the same as having a close friend or family member, and I was the only one who could do it right. After that conversation, things have been really tense between us. She ended up asking me to be a bridesmaid still, but the role felt pretty hollow at that point. I was uncomfortable attending her wedding knowing how much resentment she had toward me for not agreeing to step in as maid of honor. In the end, I told her I didn't feel right being part of the wedding at all anymore, and I refused to attend. I didn't want to deal with the stress of the situation, and I was hurt that she tried to pressure me into something I wasn't ready for. Now my family is divided. My parents are upset with me, saying I should have just helped out, even if it was last minute. They think I'm being dramatic and making this about me when it's her big day. Emily is heartbroken, and she's telling everyone I'm ruining her wedding. On the other hand, some of my friends think I made the right call, saying that it was unfair of her to expect me to take on such a big role so last minute. I've been torn about this whole thing. I love my sister, but I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I'm not going to sacrifice my own well-being to fix a problem that I didn't cause. But I also don't want to be the villain in this situation. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to make me her maid of honor last minute. AITA for refusing to let my sister's kids stay with me during her vacation. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 31F, who is a single mom to two kids, Max, 7M, and Lily, 4F. Emily and I have always had a somewhat strained relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child, perfect grades, friends, always winning praise from our parents. I, on the other hand, was the rebellious one. I didn't care as much about school. I was more into music, art, and just being a bit different. It caused tension between us, especially since our parents were pretty clear about favoring Emily. As adults, things have gotten better, but there's still some lingering resentment from me, though I try to keep it in check. Lately, Emily has been asking me for favors involving her kids. I know she's under a lot of stress, being a single mom and all, but sometimes I feel like she takes advantage of me. I'm not saying she's a bad mom, but she can be a bit of a drama queen when things don't go her way. She has this habit of throwing tantrums when I don't immediately agree to help her. I don't really like to get involved with her kids too much because I don't feel like I'm cut out to be a hands-on aunt. I don't dislike her kids, but I don't really enjoy spending extended periods of time with them either. I'd rather hang out with my friends or just have a quiet weekend to myself. Recently, Emily asked if I could watch Max and Lily for a week while she went on a vacation with her boyfriend. She said she really needed this break because she hadn't had a vacation in years, and the kids would just be too much for her to handle during that time. She mentioned that her usual babysitter was out of town and her other options were too expensive. At first, I told her I wasn't sure because I already had plans that week, plans that I had been looking forward to for a while. She pushed back, saying that she'd pay me for the week and even offered to cover some of my expenses while I was taking care of them. I could tell she was really stressing about the idea of not having a break, and it honestly did tug at my heart a little. But at the same time, I felt that this was just another example of her trying to guilt-trip me into doing something I didn't want to do. I told her I wasn't comfortable watching the kids for an entire week. I don't have kids, and I don't even know the first thing about managing two young children for such an extended period of time. She said she understood, but then asked if I could at least help her out for a weekend, just 2 or 3 days. I didn't want to sound unreasonable, so I agreed to the weekend plan. When the weekend came, I wasn't feeling great about the decision. I was exhausted from work and was looking forward to just having some time to myself. Emily dropped the kids off, and things started off fine. Max and Lily are decent kids, but Max is a handful. He's super energetic and constantly running around, while Lily needs more attention and care than I was prepared to give. By day 2, I was completely drained, and I hadn't even done much besides try to entertain them and make sure they didn't break anything in my apartment. I called Emily that afternoon to let her know I was really struggling. I told her I couldn't keep up the act for much longer and that I needed her to come pick them up earlier than planned. She was surprised and a little upset, but agreed to come over within a few hours. The moment she arrived, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She thanked me for helping, but mentioned that she had been hoping I could take the kids for a full week next time, instead of just a weekend. I was shocked. I didn't think it was even in the realm of possibility. When I mentioned that I was feeling really burnt out from just the weekend, she brushed it off as if it wasn't a big deal. She told me I needed to get over my selfish attitude and be more supportive of her. The whole conversation left me feeling annoyed and unappreciated. I agreed to help her in the future, but made it clear that I was not going to be taking the kids for extended periods of time. I just couldn't do it. Emily hasn't spoken to me much since that weekend. We've exchanged a couple of texts, but they've been short and somewhat tense. Our parents, who know about the situation, are upset with me for not being more understanding of Emily's needs. They've told me I should just suck it up and help her out more. I understand that she's stressed and needs a break, but I just don't think it's my responsibility to sacrifice my own time and well-being for her kids. It feels like she's taking advantage of the fact that I don't have kids of my own, expecting me to be the backup parent whenever she needs a break. I've tried to explain this to my parents, but they seem to think I'm being unreasonable. They've said things like, "She's your sister, you should be there for her, and you're not a kid anymore, you need to be more mature." I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here, or if I'm just standing up for myself in a situation where everyone expects me to do more than I'm willing to do. So, AITA for refusing to watch my sister's kids for an entire week? Am I being too selfish for not wanting to sacrifice my personal time and energy? AITA for kicking my brother out of my wedding after he showed up with his girlfriend who I specifically asked him not to bring? Okay, so here's the situation. I, 27F, recently got married to my now husband, 29M, and the wedding was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. It was a small, intimate affair, only around 50 people. We had a specific guest list, and we made it clear to everyone that due to space limitations and the fact that we wanted a personal atmosphere, we couldn't invite plus ones unless it was absolutely necessary. Everyone understood, and most people respected it. The issue came with my brother, Adam, 30M, who completely disregarded our wishes. I've always had a complicated relationship with Adam. We were close when we were younger, but as we got older, we started drifting apart. He's the kind of guy who tends to make everything about himself, and he's always been very disrespectful of my boundaries. He's never been great at taking no for an answer, and he always assumes his problems or needs should be prioritized over anyone else's. A few months before the wedding, I had a conversation with Adam. I told him that, while I loved him, I didn't want him bringing his new girlfriend to the wedding. At the time, they had only been dating for about 2 months. I explained that I had a tight guest list and that it was already a stretch to fit everyone I wanted there, so I couldn't invite anyone extra unless they had been in a serious relationship for a while. I told him that if things worked out with her and they were still together, I'd love to have her at future family events, but for this special day, I wanted to keep it limited to people I had a closer relationship with. Adam was not happy with this. He tried to argue, but I stuck to my guns and reiterated that I wanted the guest list to remain as planned. He seemed to begrudgingly accept it, and I thought that was the end of it. We had no further issues in the months leading up to the wedding, or so I thought. Fast forward to the wedding day, and everything was going smoothly until about halfway through the ceremony. My husband and I were standing at the altar exchanging vows when I happened to glance over to the side and saw Adam walking in with his girlfriend. I was immediately furious. I tried to keep my composure, but it felt like everything was crumbling around me. He was already seated with the rest of the guests, and I could feel my blood boiling. I quickly whispered to one of my bridesmaids to find out if Adam had intentionally disobeyed my request. She came back a few minutes later and confirmed that, yes, he had deliberately brought her after I had specifically told him not to. That was it for me. I was done. After the ceremony, I pulled my brother aside and asked him to leave. I calmly told him that I couldn't let him disrespect me on my wedding day like this, especially after everything we discussed. He immediately became defensive, saying I was being petty and that it shouldn't matter to me if he brought his girlfriend or not. He claimed that I was overreacting and that he was just trying to share a special day with someone he cared about. I told him that the issue wasn't about his girlfriend. It was about the blatant disregard for my wishes. I asked him to leave, and he started arguing with me, saying I couldn't possibly kick him out of my own wedding. He wasn't trying to make a scene, but the tension was palpable. I told him that I wasn't going to allow him to ruin my day, and I asked him again to leave. At this point, my mom noticed what was happening and came over to intervene. She sided with Adam, saying I was being too harsh and making a mountain out of a molehill. My mom argued that it wasn't a big deal, that Adam just wanted to have his girlfriend with him, and that I shouldn't make it such a big issue. But for me, this was a matter of principle. I had asked him not to bring her, and he chose to disregard my boundaries. That's not something I was willing to tolerate on my wedding day. In the end, Adam left. I was devastated, but I was also proud of myself for sticking to my guns. The rest of the wedding went smoothly, but there was definitely a cloud over the day because of what had happened. Since then, Adam hasn't spoken to me. My mom has been giving me the cold shoulder too, and a few other relatives have reached out to me, questioning why I acted the way I did. They're all telling me that I overreacted and that it wasn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Some have even suggested that I should apologize to Adam and let him back into the fold. But for me, this isn't about the girlfriend. It's about the lack of respect for my boundaries and the fact that I asked him for something very reasonable, only for him to blatantly ignore it. I feel like I made the right decision, but now I'm second-guessing myself. Was I wrong to kick my brother out of my wedding over something like this? Did I go too far, or was it justified? AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after he banned my girlfriend from attending? I, 29M. Have a younger brother, David, 27M, who recently got engaged to his fiancée, Sarah, 25F. I've always been close to my brother, and we've had a pretty solid relationship growing up. Sure, we fought as kids, but as adults, we really got along and supported each other. I've been dating my girlfriend, Elena, 28F, for almost 2 years now. Elena and I have a great relationship. She's smart, funny, supportive, and we just vibe really well together. We don't live together yet, but we spend a lot of time at each other's places. A few months ago, David told me that he was getting married, and I was excited for him. I'm not one to get overly emotional or dramatic, but I was happy he found someone he wanted to spend his life with. However, a few weeks after the announcement, David pulled me aside privately to talk about the wedding. I thought it was going to be a conversation about wedding details, maybe asking me to be his best man or something similar. But instead, he told me that he didn't want Elena to attend the wedding. I was taken aback, to say the least. I asked him why, and he said he just didn't feel comfortable having her there. He said that Elena wasn't the kind of person he wanted around at such an important event. He didn't go into specifics, but from the tone of his voice, I could tell there was some underlying issue. I asked if there was anything about Elena personally that bothered him, and he said it's just a vibe thing. She's not part of the circle. Now, I know my brother. He's always been a bit conservative and traditional, but this didn't feel like that. Elena is a warm, respectful person, and she doesn't do anything that would make someone uncomfortable, especially not a wedding. But when I pressed him further, he just stuck to his vibe, reasoning. I was confused and upset, but didn't push too hard at that moment. I told him I needed some time to think about it. I talked to Elena about it that evening. She was understandably hurt, but she didn't want to make a scene or force my brother to change his mind. I assured her that I'd handle it and try to figure out what was going on. I reached out to other family members, including our parents, to see if they had any idea why David might feel this way about Elena. No one had any real answers. My mom suggested I let it go and respect David's wishes, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to confront David directly. I called him up and asked for another conversation. This time, I wanted to get to the bottom of it. I told him that I was having a hard time understanding his decision and that I felt it was unfair to exclude Elena without giving a clear reason. He seemed a little defensive, but eventually admitted that he didn't like how Elena and Sarah interacted the last time they met at a family dinner. Apparently, Elena had made a few comments that David didn't appreciate. Nothing offensive or overtly disrespectful, but I guess he thought she was being judgmental about some things Sarah had said during the evening. From my perspective, Elena had never said anything rude or harsh, but I do know she could be a bit direct in her opinion sometimes. She's not afraid to speak her mind, but I've never felt that she crosses the line. It's one of the things I love about her. David, on the other hand, has always been more passive and avoids conflict. I think that's part of the issue. He and Sarah have similar personalities, and they both dislike confrontation. Anyway, when I heard this, I asked David if he really expected me to just cut Elena out of my life because of a single awkward dinner conversation. He didn't have much of a response, and I think he could tell I was pretty upset. He told me that it was his wedding, and he didn't want to deal with any drama or discomfort on his big day. At that point, I was really hurt. I told him that I would not attend his wedding if Elena wasn't invited. I said it was either both of us or neither of us, and I wasn't going to choose between my brother and my girlfriend. David was quiet for a long time and then told me that he couldn't change his mind. He said that if I refused to come, that would be my choice, but that I shouldn't expect him to cater to my relationship. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like an unreasonable demand, and I felt like he was being overly protective of Sarah and completely disregarding my relationship with Elena. After that conversation, I sent David a message telling him that I would not attend the wedding unless Elena was invited. I made it clear that I wasn't trying to cause trouble, but that I couldn't support him excluding someone who was important to me for no clear reason. He didn't reply immediately, but a couple of days later, he texted me saying that if I felt so strongly about it, he didn't want me to come to the wedding. He said he was sorry, but I was being unreasonable, and he didn't want anyone at the wedding who was going to make things awkward. So here we are. I've spent a few weeks processing everything, and I'm still not sure if I'm in the wrong. I feel like my brother should be able to understand that excluding my girlfriend from a family event is a big deal. At the same time, I don't want to ruin his wedding day or create a rift in the family. But I also feel like my loyalty should lie with Elena. I know David wants a certain atmosphere for his wedding, but excluding her just doesn't sit right with me. Now, I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable for standing my ground, or if I should just let it go and go to the wedding without her. But I also don't want to attend a wedding where my girlfriend isn't welcomed, especially after everything that's happened. So, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding because he banned my girlfriend from attending? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after she disrespected our home? So, here's the backstory. I, 31F, have been married to my husband, 34M, for about 5 years now. We live in a small town where most of my husband's extended family resides. It's a tight-knit community, and they all live relatively close to us, which is nice, but it also comes with some challenges. One of those challenges is my sister-in-law, Sarah, 29F. We've never really gotten along. She's always been a bit of a drama queen, and she tends to overstep boundaries, whether it's in our personal space or with our kids. For example, she's been known to show up unannounced, barge into our house, and make herself at home without any regard for our plans or comfort. I've told my husband multiple times that I don't feel comfortable with how she acts, but he always brushes it off, saying she's family and I need to be more understanding. A few months ago, Sarah asked if she could stay with us for a few weeks because she was having issues with her apartment. She claimed it was temporary and that she would be out of our hair soon. My husband agreed without asking me first, and when I found out, I wasn't thrilled. We have a small house with 2 kids under 5, and the idea of having someone in our space for an indefinite amount of time didn't sit well with me. But since my husband had already said yes, I reluctantly agreed to make the best of it. From the moment Sarah moved in, things got tense. She insisted on making herself very comfortable, using our living room as her personal space, taking over the bathroom for hours, and even leaving her things in the kitchen. I don't mind sharing, but it felt like she was treating our home like a hotel, and it quickly became overwhelming. I tried to set some boundaries by saying, hey, we need the living room in the evenings to unwind with the kids, and could you please not leave your stuff in the kitchen? But she'd brush it off or give me some passive-aggressive comment like, I thought I was helping by making myself at home, which was frustrating. After about 2 weeks, things started getting worse. I came home one day to find Sarah hosting a bunch of her friends at our house without telling me. She had moved the furniture around, made snacks, and was just sitting there like it was her place. I felt incredibly disrespected. When I asked her what was going on, she said, well, I thought it would be nice to have a little get-together since we're all stuck here. I couldn't believe it. My husband was out of town for work, and I had the kids to take care of, so I told her I wasn't comfortable with her hosting people in our house without asking me first. She rolled her eyes and said I was being too uptight and too controlling. That night, I went to bed feeling angry and upset, but I didn't want to start a huge argument, so I just kept it to myself. The straw that broke the camel's back came a few days later. I had planned a family outing with my kids, and we were getting ready to leave. Sarah was home, and when I told her we were heading out, she acted put off. She said she was looking forward to a quiet day in, and could we hold off for a bit so she could get some rest. I was already in a rush, and I snapped back. This is my house, and we're going to do what we've planned, so if you need a rest, you can do it somewhere else. I didn't mean for it to sound as harsh as it did, but I was frustrated. She didn't take it well. She made some snide comments about how I was being a terrible host and how I didn't know how to treat family. I left the house feeling tense and angry. When my husband got home, I told him everything that had been going on and explained how I was feeling. He seemed to understand at first, but then he said, well, I don't want to cause a rift in the family, so maybe you should just try to get along with her for a few more weeks until she's gone. I was honestly floored. I felt like my feelings didn't matter, and I was being asked to just endure it for the sake of peace. That's when I told him that I couldn't do it anymore. I'd had enough of the constant disrespect, and I felt like I was being taken advantage of in my own home. I told him that Sarah needed to find somewhere else to stay, and I wasn't going to let her stay here any longer. When I told Sarah she had to leave, she was furious. She accused me of being petty, controlling, and unreasonable. She said I was being a terrible sister-in-law and that I had no compassion for her situation. I tried to explain that I was tired of being disrespected in my own home, but she didn't seem to care. She left in a huff and hasn't spoken to me since. My husband is upset with me too, saying I should have been more patient and that now Sarah feels alienated from the family. He thinks I overreacted, and he's been giving me the cold shoulder for the past few days. So, now I'm left wondering if I was in the wrong here. Did I overstep by kicking her out, or was I justified in putting my foot down? AITA for refusing to let Sarah stay with us after everything that's happened? AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she disinvited me for being too dramatic? I, 29M, have a sister, Kate, 26F, who's getting married in a couple of months. For context, we've always had a pretty good relationship. Sure, we had our occasional sibling fights growing up, but nothing major, and I've always been there for her when she needed support. That all changed when she got engaged and started planning the wedding. At first, I was genuinely excited for her. I've never been the type of person to get overly invested in weddings, but I thought it would be nice to help out and be involved, especially since we're close. I thought maybe I could pitch in with the planning or help with logistics, but Kate insisted on doing everything herself. Fair enough. I respected her wishes, and I didn't push it. The trouble started about 3 months ago. Kate came to me and asked me to be a groomsman in her wedding. I was a little confused, since I thought it was a more traditional thing, where groomsmen are men and bridesmaids are women. But she said it was a new trend, and that she thought it would be special to have me stand by her side. I said yes, of course. She's my sister, and I wanted to be there for her. As the wedding day approached, things started to get stressful. Kate had been venting a lot to me about how hard it was to plan everything, and I'd often be the one to listen when she needed to let off some steam. I didn't mind. But then, she started making little digs about how dramatic I was when I would express my own feelings. This happened a few times during the planning, but I shrugged it off, thinking she was just stressed and didn't mean anything by it. One of the first big moments that really made me question things was when Kate asked me to help her with her dress fittings. I was flattered, and I agreed right away. When I showed up, she seemed in a bit of a rush, and she kept saying how overwhelming everything was. It was clear that she wasn't in the best headspace, but I stuck around to help in any way I could. Toward the end of the fitting, though, Kate got snippy with me for suggesting a few small changes to the design that I thought might make the dress look better. It was a harmless comment, but she shot it down immediately and told me I didn't know anything about fashion. At this point, I started to feel like maybe I was just in the way. I didn't want to make her more stressed, so I stopped offering suggestions and just tried to be supportive. Then, about a month ago, things got worse. Kate asked me to come over to her house to help her with the seating chart for the wedding. I didn't mind at all, but when I got there, I noticed a strange tension in the air. Kate had invited her soon-to-be in-laws over for the seating chart discussion, and right away, I felt like an outsider. Kate and her fiancé's family started making decisions without consulting me at all, and when I tried to suggest where certain people should sit, Kate shot me down immediately. It was like I wasn't even there, and I could see the discomfort in her eyes. At one point, her fiancé's mother straight up told me that I wasn't necessary in the planning process and that they had everything under control. I was hurt, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I kept my feelings to myself. However, when I left that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that my role in her life, at least when it came to the wedding, was becoming more and more insignificant. I began questioning whether Kate even wanted me involved in her special day. A few days after the seating chart incident, Kate called me and asked if we could talk. She told me that she had been thinking about it, and that she felt I was being too dramatic about the whole wedding thing. She said that my behavior was making her feel uncomfortable and that I wasn't respecting her boundaries. I was blindsided by this. I told her that I had just been trying to be supportive, but Kate said she didn't need me overstepping it every turn. She then told me that she was going to ask someone else to take my place as a groomsman and that I wasn't invited to the wedding anymore. I was absolutely shocked. I had never even remotely expected this to happen. Kate and I had always been close, and I couldn't understand why she would suddenly cut me out like this. I asked if we could talk it through, but she was firm. She said she was too stressed and needed to distance herself from anyone who was causing her more anxiety. I honestly didn't know how to process it. I felt like I had done nothing wrong other than try to be involved and supportive. It felt like Kate was taking out all her wedding stress on me. And frankly, I felt completely betrayed. I called my mom to try and get her to help mediate the situation, but she told me that Kate's wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event and that I should let it go for the sake of family peace. Now I'm at a crossroads. I've told Kate that I won't help with the wedding at all after everything that happened, and I've made it clear that I won't attend if she doesn't want me there. But my family has been pressuring me to forgive Kate and make things right because she's stressed and it's her big day. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she disinvited me? Should I be more understanding of her stress and try to salvage our relationship? Or is it okay for me to stand my ground and refuse to be a part of it? AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with me after she trashed my house. So, this has turned into a bit of a family drama, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm being unreasonable. I, 31F, have a husband, Dave, 33M, and we have 2 kids, Aiden 6 and Emma 4. My husband's family is pretty tight-knit, and while I get along with most of them, there's one person in particular who has really tested my patience over the years, my sister-in-law, Nicole, 29F. Nicole has always been a bit high maintenance, I guess you could say. She doesn't have kids of her own and often makes it clear that she doesn't understand why I can't just drop everything to hang out or go out for a girls' night. She also tends to be a bit entitled, expecting everyone to accommodate her without much consideration for anyone else's needs or schedules. A few months ago, Nicole called me up and asked if she could come stay with us for a week. She had just broken up with her boyfriend and was in a really bad place emotionally. I didn't want to say no outright, but I was hesitant because, while I do care about her, having someone stay at our house for an extended period with kids around isn't exactly easy. But my husband insisted that we should help her out, so I agreed. I set some ground rules beforehand. I told her that we have a pretty structured routine with the kids, and while she was welcome to stay, she needed to respect the house, the kids' schedules, and our general way of living. She agreed, saying she understood, and that she was just looking for a quiet space to stay and process everything. Fast forward to the week she arrived, and things started off well enough. She wasn't overly intrusive, but she also wasn't exactly respectful. She'd leave her stuff all over the house, shoes by the door, empty food wrappers in the living room, makeup and personal products in the bathroom where the kids could get into them. I would tidy up behind her, but didn't want to make a big deal out of it since she was going through a tough time. The real issue started on the 3rd day of her stay. My husband had to work late, and I was juggling the kids, dinner, bath time, and the usual bedtime routine. Nicole, who had mostly been lounging around all day, suddenly decided she wanted to go out for drinks with some of her friends. I told her that I wasn't going to be able to just drop everything and watch the kids for her while she went out, especially since my husband wasn't home. I didn't mind her having her social life, but I also needed help keeping things running smoothly at home. Nicole was not happy. She argued that she was in a bad place and deserved a break, and that I never made time for her when she needed support. I pointed out that I had made time for her by letting her stay in our home, but that didn't seem to register with her. She ended up storming off to her room, and I thought that was the end of it. The next morning, I woke up to a disaster. Nicole had gone out anyway, without telling me, and when she came back, she was completely intoxicated. She stumbled into the guest room where she was staying, knocking over a glass of wine on the nightstand and spilling it onto the carpet. Then she went to the bathroom, puked all over the floor, and didn't bother to clean up. She left her clothes everywhere, and there was an empty bottle of wine on the floor when I went in to check on things. The worst part? She had locked herself in the room and refused to acknowledge any of the mess she made. I was livid. Not only had she completely disregarded the house rules, but she had made a huge mess and then acted like nothing happened. I had to get the kids ready for school, clean up the vomit, and deal with the aftermath of her night out, on top of everything else I was already handling. By the time Dave got home from work, I was already near my breaking point. I confronted Nicole about what happened, and she was unapologetic. She said she was sorry I had to clean up after her, but didn't think it was a big deal. She then went on to complain that I was too uptight and didn't understand how hard her breakup was. I told her that I understood, but that it was not an excuse for her behavior. She basically called me a buzzkill and accused me of being unsupportive. Dave overheard the argument, and he didn't seem too pleased with Nicole's attitude either. That night, Dave and I had a long conversation. He agreed that Nicole had crossed the line, but didn't want to make things worse by asking her to leave right away. Instead, he suggested that we talk to her the next day and explain the situation calmly. The next morning, I sat Nicole down and told her I felt disrespected and uncomfortable with the way she had behaved. I also explained that, as a guest in our home, she needed to take responsibility for her actions and show some consideration. She didn't take it well. She accused me of being too controlling and claimed that I was overreacting. She also said that I was just mad because I'm a mom and couldn't relate to what she was going through. At this point, I was done. I told her that I didn't think it was a good idea for her to stay with us anymore, and that she needed to find somewhere else to go. Nicole was shocked and angry, and she stormed out of the house, saying she would never stay with us again. She's since been telling the rest of the family that I kicked her out for no reason and that I'm being too harsh. Some of the family members are on her side, saying I should have been more understanding and that I should have let her stay a bit longer. Others think I did the right thing by setting boundaries. Now, I'm wondering if I was too harsh in asking her to leave. I understand that she's going through a tough time, but I don't think that's an excuse to disrespect my home, my family, and my time. AITA for kicking her out after everything that happened? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.